Hello guys, I'm Stan, experienced professional in contracts and procurement. I'm a contract engineer in China and big international project for the moment. In the beginning of my career here, I faced with many issues in supply chain. Can you imagine? Yes, China is a part of global supply chain, it's true, and for today, countless products what we use are made in and sourced from China every day. It's also important to know that quality of such products becomes higher and higher, and Chinese exports range from the clothes, toys, to the highest technology computer electronics, different equipment for various industries, and even medical equipment for the moment. First thing I understood started my work here that supply chain management and in particular sourcing process in China is absolutely different from Western model and classical approaches. Successful supply chain management in China depends on very different principles and practices than in the West. Me, my friends, entrepreneurs and colleagues from other companies interested in Chinese suppliers but didn't understand and adjust to those differences, faced with a lot of problems and obstacles. At the most fundamental and higher level, China's commercial environment is still young in general, and simple principles that Western business people use by default are not used in China. Some simple rules, such as not substituting materials in customer-specified products without prior customer approval, for instance, don't have the same intuitive acceptance in China as in the West. Companies that try to manage suppliers without understanding these and the many other differences, they could encounter disappointment. Finally, I understood that decoding the differences is not a big challenge, but it takes patience, curiosity and disciplined approach. I have learned a lot of additional information, consulted with experienced supply chain managers who previously operated in China, and tried to apply different approaches in practice working with Chinese suppliers. And all of this helped me to identify 4 keys to success in supply chain management in China. Supplier qualification process should be effective, much more effective than in the West, and should involve more than checking product samples, equipment and quality documentation. Why these are effective everyday tools in the West, they may not be used in the same way in China. For example, Chinese suppliers know that Western customers expect to see control charts, work instructions and visual indicators. However, a large percentage of Chinese companies do not understand the importance of these tools in effective operational management, and what is more important, how to apply them. Statistical process control charts are often kept and filled with no closed-loop management discipline to control operations outputs. Commonly, many of these tools remain new to Chinese suppliers, and the process of infusing them into management discipline is still a work in progress. Instead, effective supplier qualification requires assessing the stability of the supplier's management and processes to maximize confidence that the selected supplier can consistently meet the full range of your requirements, including those related to product, total cost of product acquisition, quality and logistics. If you want to be more protected, you can start from suppliers who experience in work with international companies. I did it by improving pre-qualification metrics and including absence of such experience as a showstopper. Just ask your potential suppliers to provide the relevant evidence, because if the buy is a strategic, ongoing need, then the goal should be to select a dependable and long-term supply chain partner and not just chase the lowest price product, correct? If you search and quality supplier effectively, then you will almost never have to sacrifice price for quality and support performance. By the way, as a fact, Chinese suppliers who has already worked with international clients will offer you a price higher. Well, it's critical that a supplier evaluation be adjusted in both format and content to reflect the core difference in relative sophistication between the Chinese and Western supply chain environments. But we will speak about it later at step number 3. A disciplined supplier qualification process also identifies strengths and weaknesses in processes that are very often the determinants of actual long-term success. Understanding a supplier's strengths and weaknesses allows you to predict that supplier's ability to deliver sustained product, quality, delivery, and communications performance. It is recommended that buyers apply a detailed supplier qualification process that baselines and assesses a supplier across a wide range of measures in 6 functional disciplines. First is manufacturing facility and process equipment, which should be available for your order, manufacturing management processes, quality systems, technical support, logistics and export capabilities, general management and finance, and it would be better if your potential suppliers already had an experience in the bullet points specified above. Importantly, the buyer should take nothing for granted in the supplier qualification process and instead verify information when possible. For example, it is important to seek out documented linkages between control charts and formal feedback and process improvement programming and operations. By the way, for today, a lot of Chinese suppliers invite a lot of foreign nationalities who can help them to carry out bidding process and administrate contracts and POs implementation. The second key to China's supply chain success is synchronizing the understanding of all customer-supplier rules of engagement from the outset. Innocent mismatches of expectations between Western customers and Chinese suppliers about Western commercial principles are extremely common. If you engage a Chinese supplier assuming its management intuitively understands how suppliers and customers interact in the West, you are taking a big risk. For that reason, a formal supply contract where full range of engagement rules will be described is a necessity. Indeed, the importance of contract cannot be overstated. Keep in mind that from the Chinese perspective, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen, or if it's not in writing, it's not important. I was wondering at my first negotiations in Shanghai with Chinese vendors, it was 2 years ago, when we, as a client, wanted just to have one round and first round of negotiations, while potential supplier was ready to sign the agreement right after discussion because they were very interested in this order and don't care about further implementation. Can you imagine? Simply sending a purchase order to a Chinese supplier may work for commodity-like buys, but for any other types of products, using purchase orders alone is a risky path. The more strategic the buy, the more critical it is to assure that your Chinese supplier understands clearly all required dimensions of the supply relationships. It is recommended that for all purchases of strategically important buys, formal supply contract that are more comprehensive than we would use in the West should be established with supplier. Contracts need to determine all possible rules of engagement, including product specifications, quality assurance requirements, terms and conditions of sale, intellectual property, custom safety stock programs, non-complete provisions, coordination procedures. For the moment, force majeure clause is very important. You can watch how you can write force majeure provisions in my video, link will be below in the description. Okay, investing the time to do all this work before any actual purchases have been made prevents problems later. In combination with disciplined supplier qualifications, a complete supply contract sets a sound foundation of transparent understanding and expectation between buyers and Chinese suppliers. Moreover, in my practice sometimes a separate kickoff meeting is required in order to pre-agree on way forward and ensure that your supplier understands everything you want from him. The third key to success is refining your company's routine supplier management process to suit in China. These processes work effectively in the West, but they are almost certainly sub-optimized for use in China. In the West, Buyers typically exercise, arm's length accountability for supply consistency and compliance across all requirements, and they expect suppliers to manage this requirement with a minimum of active intervention by the buyer. China will someday reach the same state, but its supply chain is currently far from being that developed. Well, Western customers who adopt the same approach in China could face with obstacles and problems, as I told before. What shall we do? So, manufacturing process such as quality assurance, material management, and manufacturing engineering lags that in the West. This is a problem. These processes have taken generations to develop in the West, and they are still in progress status in China. Yes, it means routine visits and project meetings with suppliers, performing periodic regulations audits, and implementing on-the-site quality assurance programs or inspections. It may also require working on specific product and process improvement projects. It takes systematic stability of a supplier's production and management processes to turn startup success into long-term supply performance. If it is not practical for your company to do this directly from your home country, or you have no ability to do it, and you really don't want to invest in having your own team in China, maybe it's better to consider engaging an experienced third party to assist, especially nowadays. The fourth key to China's supply chain success is to continuously test and adjust the supplier base. In the West, supply chain professionals are constantly scanning the general supply base, searching for new suppliers and options to optimize performance, in a dynamic environment. It is surprising how many companies abandon this practice when sourcing from China, and I don't know really why. They often find a supplier and then stick with that supplier for years, with little or no investigation of alternatives. Rising costs in and immediately around major cities in eastern China, such as Shanghai, Guangzhou, Zhengshan, and Beijing, present challenges for Western companies that found qualified suppliers years ago. Industrial development now is moving into secondary cities, and many of these cities are surprisingly advanced and inviting from industrial and commercial standpoints, and more than that in terms of their quality of life. Of course, sourcing of new suppliers could be more complicated, but based on experience, not so risky second time. To sustain and improve supply chain performance in China requires an ongoing focus on monitoring the dynamic supply chain environment there, scanning the suppliers that can deliver improved total value. In other words, the same discipline that is exercised to continuously adjust and optimize supply chain performance in the West needs to be exercised in China as well. In fact, because China's supply base is younger and more dynamic with faster development and growth than in the West, it's arguably more important. Friends, hope you found something interesting for yourself. Please like, subscribe the channel. It will motivate me to create more relevant content for you. Use comments for discussions and questions. See you soon and thank you.